The auction square was filled with shouting voices, heavy boots, and the stink of sweat and blood. Chains clinked with every movement, and broken beings stood on display like useless furniture. One of them, a small alien girl, stood at the edge of the wooden platform, her wrists raw from metal cuffs. Her skin, pale with a soft green hue, was marked with bruises and dried cuts. Her white hair hung in dirty tangles over her face, hiding the fear in her glowing eyes. She was the last one, no value, someone said from the crowd. She's too skinny, probably mute. Doesn't even look like she can walk straight. Another voice laughed. Put her in the scrap pile. She didn't cry. Not anymore. There were no tears left inside her. She had learned long ago that crying only made them angrier. Made the pain worse, so she stood still, waiting for the next hit or the next command. The slaver shouted. One last piece. Discounted. Take her for half price. No one stepped forward. The crowd began to turn away, and then a man moved. He wasn't like the others. No long coat, no shiny boots, just a worn jacket, a calm face, and a deep scar across his left cheek. His eyes didn't look hungry or cruel. They were tired, quiet, almost sad. He didn't say a word. Just raised one hand. The slaver blinked. You want this one? The man nodded once. The crowd laughed. Some muttered, old fool. Others shook their heads. But the slaver quickly cut her chains and shoved her toward him. All yours, human, no returns. She stumbled, her legs weak. She looked up at him, heart frozen with fear. He didn't grab her, didn't drag her. Instead, he pulled off his coat and wrapped it around her shoulders. That scared her even more. Was it a trick? A setup? Was he going to wait until they were alone to hurt her? To torture her slowly like the others? He led her to a small old truck, opened the side door, and helped her climb in gently. She sat, shaking, eyes darting around for ropes, cages. Anything that would trap her again, but there was nothing, just a water bottle and a blanket. As the vehicle rumbled away from the slaver camp, she sat curled in the corner, not drinking, not speaking. Only watching. The man said nothing. His hands stayed on the controls, his eyes on the road. She tried to guess, what would he do first? Hit her, chain her, sell her again. But miles passed, and none of that happened. They arrived at a quiet place, a small hill house made of stone and metal. A garden grew nearby, and birds flew over the trees. It didn't look like a prison, but she didn't trust anything anymore. He helped her out of the truck, and she flinched, but he didn't touch her. Instead, he pointed to the door, then stepped aside, letting her walk in first. The house was simple, clean, and warm. A small kitchen, a soft chair, and a fire crackling in a heater. It smelled of old books and fresh bread. She stood frozen in the doorway, waiting for orders, waiting for pain. Instead, the man quietly walked to the kitchen, poured soup into a bowl, and set it on the table. He placed a spoon beside it, then stepped back. He didn't force her, didn't speak, just waited. Her stomach growled, but she didn't move. She had learned not to trust food. Sometimes it was drugged, sometimes it was poisoned. He noticed her fear, and without a word, took another bowl, filled it, and sat across from her. Slowly, calmly, he ate from his own bowl, sip by sip, bite by bite. She watched, her hands shaking. Finally, when her hunger screamed louder than her fear, she crept forward, picked up the spoon, and took one tiny sip. It was warm, salty, real, for the first time in years. Her body relaxed just a little. After the meal, he pointed to a small room down the hall. A bed waited inside, clean sheets, a towel, even a toothbrush on the shelf. She looked at him again. What was this? He simply said 2 words, soft and steady. Rest now. Then he turned and walked away. That night, she didn't sleep. Not really. Her eyes stayed open in the dark, ears alert for danger, hands ready to run. But nothing came. No footsteps, no shouting, no pain, only silence, and a quiet fire outside her room, where the human sat, watching the stars. She didn't understand him, didn't believe him, but something inside her whispered, maybe this time was different. She woke up expecting chains. The girl opened her eyes slowly, heart pounding as if someone would burst through the door any second. But all she saw was sunlight through a small window, soft sheets around her, and a quiet hum from the heater in the corner. No cold floors, no metal cuffs, no shouting. She sat up quickly, unsure if she had died and entered some strange dream. Her muscles ached, and her arms were still marked from the chains, but she was alone, free and warm. Her eyes scanned the room, looking for cameras or hidden traps. There were none. The small room had a bed, a wooden dresser, and a tiny round mirror on the wall. A folded outfit lay near her feet, clean and simple soft gray pants, and a loose shirt. The smell of something warm reached her nose, eggs and bread maybe. Her stomach growled, and she hated that, hated how weak she felt, but hunger always won. She stepped carefully out into the hallway, her bare feet silent on the wooden floor. The man Daniel stood in the kitchen, stirring something in a pan. His back was to her, and his old jacket hung from a hook nearby. He didn't turn when she entered, just spoke in a calm, deep voice. "There's water on the table. Food's almost ready." She froze, still expecting the moment he'd change ways. His voice, give her orders, but he didn't. The table had 2 plates already placed, and a small cup of water sat beside one. Her eyes narrowed, still trying to understand the trap. No man had ever fed her twice without wanting something. "You don't speak?" Daniel asked gently, still not turning around. She didn't answer, didn't trust her voice, didn't trust him. He didn't push, didn't ask again, just finished cooking and placed eggs and toast onto both plates. He sat down on one side of the table and motioned toward the other. She walked slowly, unsure whether to run or sit, but the food smelled too good, and her legs felt too weak. She sat, silent, her spoon shaking slightly as she picked it up. They ate together in quiet. Only the sound of chewing and a bird singing outside the window broke the silence. After a while, Daniel leaned back in his chair, arms crossed. "I'm not going to hurt you," he said, eyes calm. "I didn't buy you to make you a slave." Her eyes widened, but her face stayed cold. She had heard those words before, lies from other monsters. "I saw what they were doing to the others." He continued, "What they did to you." He looked away, jaw tightening. "I was a soldier once. I've seen too much." Still, she said nothing. He stood slowly and pointed to a small door down the hallway. "There's a bath if you want it," he said. "Towels and soap inside." Then he left, walking out the front door without a sound. She waited 5 full minutes before moving, then crept to the bathroom and locked the door behind her. Warm water flowed from a metal pipe. The tub filled slowly, steam rising. She touched the surface and flinched, but it wasn't scalding. It was perfect. She stepped in, and for the first time in her life she cried while being clean. Later that afternoon, she explored the house carefully. The man had left a set of boots near the door for her size. She checked every room, no cages, no hidden doors. She found books, maps, a shelf of strange tools, and a locked drawer in his room. Her fingers touched the handle, tempted to open it, but she stopped herself. She didn't know if he'd punish her, or worse, she didn't want to find out when he returned hours later. Holding a basket of fruit and supplies, she backed away from the door instinctively. He noticed her flinch, but said nothing. He simply placed the basket down, then stepped away. "I'll be in the garden," he said softly. "You can rest, eat, or explore." Then he walked out again, letting the door swing shut behind him. She walked to the window and peeked outside. He was kneeling in the dirt, planting something carefully. Birds landed near him, unafraid. He looked peaceful. She didn't understand him, didn't understand any of this. That night, when she lay in bed again, staring at the ceiling, one question kept repeating in her mind. Why? Why would a human one with power and choice save her instead of breaking her? Why no chains, no pain, no orders? Why did his eyes look sad when he saw her scars? She didn't have the answers. Not yet, but something inside her whispered again, louder than before. This man is not like the others. And for the first time, she closed her eyes and slept, really slept. She stood in the doorway, watching him from behind. Daniel sat on a wooden stool, gently fixing a broken tool under the morning sun. His hands moved slowly, carefully, as if even metal deserved kindness. Birds sang somewhere in the trees, and the wind carried the scent of earth and firewood. He hadn't said much that day, not even when she walked into the room wearing the clean clothes he had left. They didn't talk, but something had changed. Her body still stayed tense, ready to flee at any moment, but her eyes had stopped scanning the walls for weapons. Still, she couldn't understand. Why didn't he look at her like the others? Why? Didn't he try to touch her, or command her, or ask for services like the traders before? And why did he keep looking at her with pity? She stepped closer. Her bare feet made no sound on the wooden floor, but he noticed her anyway. Need something? He asked, not turning his head. She didn't answer, just stood still, silent, unsure what to say. Unsure if she was allowed to speak. After a few seconds, he set the tool down and looked at her. "You can talk," he said softly, "if you want." Her lips parted, but no words came out. It had been too long. Too many years of silence. Daniel sighed quietly. "You don't have to be afraid here," he said. "I know you've been through things. Bad things." His voice didn't shake, but his eyes did. She looked away, ashamed, confused. Her fingers pulled at the sleeve of her shirt, her thoughts loud and broken. Then he said something that froze her breath. "You're not a thing," he said gently. "You're a person." She blinked, slowly turning to face him again. Person, not a pet, not property, not cargo. She didn't believe it. Couldn't. He stood. Not close, not threatening. "I know they told you otherwise," he said. "They treated you like you were trash, something to be used." She stared, unmoving, but they were wrong. He added, "They didn't see you, but I do." Her chest tightened, her throat burned. She shook her head because believing those words would hurt more than the beatings. She had wanted to believe them long. "I go back when she was first taken. Back when she screamed for help and no one came." She backed up, nearly stumbling. "Careful," he said gently, holding out a hand but not touching her. She regained her balance and stood there, breathing fast. "I don't want anything from you," he said, voice steady. "Not payment, not obedience, not loyalty." He looked at her like she mattered, like she wasn't invisible. "I just want you to heal." Her hands trembled. Her lips moved without sound. Then finally, she spoke one word, small and broken. "Why?" He smiled softly, not with joy, but with sadness. "Because no one ever gave me that chance when I was young," he said, "and I swore. If I ever had the power to save someone, I would." Her knees gave out before she realized it. She sat on the floor, arms wrapped around herself, and the tears came. She didn't sob loudly, didn't scream. Her tears fell silently, like rain on dry land. He didn't come close. He just sat back on the stool and waited. Let her cry, let her break. Because he knew what it meant to break before you could rebuild. Minutes passed, or maybe hours. She didn't know. When the tears stopped, she looked at him again. "You don't want to sell me?" she asked, barely above a whisper. "No," he replied. "You don't want to use me?" "Never." "Then What am I supposed to do? His answer was simple. Whatever you want. She had no answer to that, because she didn't know what she wanted. No one had ever asked that night. She sat near the fire instead of hiding in her room. She didn't speak, didn't smile, but she stayed, and that was something. Daniel handed her a blanket, not to control her, but to offer comfort, and for the first time, she accepted it without fear. Not because she trusted him completely, but because for the first time, she wanted to try to live, try to feel, try to understand who she was, not as a slave, but as a person. The days passed quietly. She was no longer afraid to leave her room. She began to help in small ways, washing dishes, watering the plants, folding blankets. She didn't speak much, but her eyes watched everything, always learning, always waiting. Daniel didn't ask questions. He didn't try to rush her. He simply let her exist in peace. For her, that peace was confusing. No orders, no punishments, no threats, just time, safety, and space. She had never had those things before, and part of her didn't believe they were real. That evening, after dinner, Daniel brought out a box of old tools and began working by the fireplace. The room was warm and quiet, the light from the flames making soft shadows on the walls. She sat nearby, holding a mug of warm tea, watching him work. Then he picked up a metal rod, long, sharp, and glowing faintly at the tip. She froze, her heart suddenly slamming in her chest. Her fingers dropped the mug, and it shattered on the floor. Her breath caught, muscles locked in panic. She stared at the tool in his hand and saw something else, a memory. Searing pain, dark rooms, masked faces, that same shape, that same metal. It was used on her, once burned into her back like a brand. No, she whispered, eyes wide, voice shaking. He looked up, confused. What? Then she screamed. It wasn't a loud scream, it was raw, broken, and filled with terror. She backed up fast, hit the wall, and dropped to the floor, covering her head, her whole body shaking. Daniel dropped the tool immediately and raised both hands. It's okay. It's okay. I'm not going to hurt you, he said, his voice calm but urgent. She didn't hear the words. All she saw was pain, fire, and slavery. I'm sorry, he said, stepping back slowly. It's just a welding rod. I should have warned you. He moved to the other side of the room and sat down, far from her, letting her see his hands were empty. Her breathing was fast, too fast. Her heart thumped like it wanted to escape. Her body didn't know where she was anymore, back in the ship. Still owned, still trapped. He didn't try to come closer, didn't grab her, didn't shout. He just waited. Minutes passed. Slowly, she looked up. Her hands still trembled, but her eyes were clearer. Daniel spoke softly. You're safe here, I promise. She stared at him, her voice weak. That tool, I know, he said. It reminded you of something. She nodded, hugging herself tightly. He sighed and gently pushed the welding rod far under the table with his foot. I won't use it while you're in the room, he said. Not ever again. She didn't know what to say. No one had ever said that before, not even after hurting her. They always blamed her, called her weak, told her to stop crying, but Daniel didn't call her weak. That night, she stayed close to the wall, sitting silently by the fire, watching him read a small book. You can sleep in your room if you want, he said quietly. I'll stay out here. She didn't move, just sat in silence, thinking, breathing, remembering, before sunrise. She finally whispered, They used it to mark me. He looked at her surprised, not at her words, but at the pain behind them, on your back. He asked gently. She nodded once. Daniel didn't ask to see it, didn't try to touch her. Instead, he said, Then it won't come near you again. Her lip trembled. You're not like the others, she said, voice breaking. I try not to be, he replied. I've failed before, but not with me, she whispered. He nodded, and for the first time. She smiled just a little. It wasn't much, but it was real. She stood and went to her room, closed the door slowly, then leaned against it, eyes closed. She had faced a demon from her past tonight tan for once. She didn't have to face it alone, and that made all the difference. She had begun to sleep through the night, not because the fear was gone, but because, little by little, Daniel's house started to feel less like a hiding place and more like a quiet world where she could breathe. She had even learned how to use the small communicator tablet in the corner of the living room, just for reading books about gardening, stars, and food. But that day, something changed. She woke up to the sound of low voices. Daniel was talking to someone outside, not loud, not angry, but serious. She couldn't make out all the words, just pieces. I found her. Still alive. No, I won't hand her over. Her stomach twisted. Was he speaking to someone from her past? Someone who wanted to take her back. She moved closer to the window, careful not to make a sound, peeking through the side curtain. She saw Daniel speaking to a man in uniform. Not a slaver, not a soldier, something in between. His coat had a silver symbol on the shoulder, one she didn't recognize. Daniel's face looked different, harder, colder. The man in uniform stepped closer. She's listed as missing property, he said. The syndicate still has claims on her. Daniel's eyes narrowed. She's not property, he growled. She's a person. The man held up a device. They don't care what you think. The trackers they use still ping her location. Tracker. Her heart dropped. Daniel stepped back and nodded once. Then I'll find it and destroy it, he said. And you can tell them nothing. The man lowered his voice. You know that makes you a target. I've been one before, Daniel replied. It didn't stop me then. It won't now. After the man left, Daniel came inside. Calm like nothing happened, but she knew he was hiding something. She waited until nightfall, then sat across from him at the table. You lied to me, she said quietly. He looked up, not surprised. No, he said. I just didn't tell you everything. Her voice trembled. Who were you talking to? Who's looking for me? Daniel leaned back in the chair. His eyes were tired again, older than before. I used to work with a rebel cell, he said, during the Galactic Wars. I know, she said. You told me. He nodded. But what I didn't say is that after the wars, some of us kept searching for the ones who were taken, sold, branded like you. Her breath caught. You were looking for me? Not just you, he replied. There were hundreds, thousands even, children, civilians, captured from lost colonies. Some of us made it our mission to find as many as we could. She stared at him, and you found me by accident. He shook his head. No, I followed your signal. Signal. Your collar had a tracker buried deep in the skin. That's how they tagged you as property. She touched the back of her neck quickly, eyes wide. It's still there. Daniel stood and walked to a small box near the shelf. He opened it and pulled out a small metal scanner. We can remove it, he said gently. If you let me, she hesitated. Will it hurt? A little, he said, but not as much as carrying it forever. She nodded slowly. That night, under the soft glow of a lamp, she sat on a chair with her head bowed forward while Daniel carefully worked. His hands were steady, his tools quiet. He found the chip, a tiny thing, smaller than a grain of rice, glowing faintly blue. He removed it and dropped it into a metal dish, then crushed it with a press tool until sparks flickered out and it went dark. No one will find you through that again, he said. She didn't speak, just sat still, staring at the crushed metal piece. Then finally, her voice cracked. Why do you care so much? Daniel looked at her, his eyes not angry, not sad, just real. Because I couldn't save everyone, he said, but I can save you. That night, she didn't sleep in her room. She curled up on the old couch beside the fire, holding a pillow. Tight, her eyes stayed on him until they closed on their own. She didn't know what tomorrow would bring, but for now, she was free. And for now, she believed he meant every word. The wind howled louder that night. Dark clouds had gathered over the hilltop house, hiding the stars. A storm was coming, but not just the kind that brings rain. She sat by the fire, holding a warm cup in her hands, trying to feel calm, trying to believe that the danger was over. But deep down, something felt wrong. Daniel stood near the door, double-checking the lock and placing a rifle by the wall. His movements were slow but careful. "Is someone coming?" she asked, her voice soft. He didn't look at her, just nodded. "I think so." Her chest tightened. "Slavers." "Maybe," he said. "Or someone working for them. That uniformed man I spoke to. He didn't show up by accident." She placed the cup down, her hands suddenly cold. "What will they do?" Daniel turned to face her. His eyes were calm, but his jaw was tight. "They'll try to take you back." Her voice cracked. "And you?" "They'll try to kill me." He said it like a fact, not a fear. A loud beep echoed through the room, an alert from the scanner outside. Daniel moved fast, pulling the curtain back just enough to peek out. A black transport had landed in the distance. Sleek, silent, dangerous figures in armor stepped out. Weapons in hand, they weren't peacekeepers. They weren't neighbors. "They're here," Daniel said. Grabbing the rifle, she stood up, heart pounding. "Run," she whispered. "We should run." "No," he said firmly. "They'll track us. We make a stand here." She backed away, her breath sharp, her legs shaking. The past rushed through her like a flood. Memories of being dragged, chained, beaten. "I can't go back," she said, tears building. "You won't," he replied, voice steady. Suddenly, a deep voice boomed from a speaker outside. "Hand over the girl, human, or we burn the place." To ash, Daniel didn't answer. The voice came again, sharper, colder. "You have 1 minute." She rushed to the front, grabbing his arm. "You don't have to do this for me," she said. You're not just anything," he said. Cutting her off, "You're someone. You matter." He handed her a small device. "If anything happens to me, take this and go out the back tunnel. It'll guide you to the resistance outpost." "No," she said. "I'm not leaving you." But he was already moving, opening a hidden panel. In the floor near the fireplace inside was a smaller blaster, extra ammo, and a communication jammer. The house lights went dim, and the room turned red from emergency backup power. Outside, the armored figures moved forward. A metal voice called out again, "Last warning, human." Daniel opened the door, just enough to point the rifle out, and fired once, sharp and direct. One of the attackers dropped with a flash of sparks. Then all hell broke loose. Blaster fire lit up the front yard, bolts striking the walls, the ground, the roof. She covered her ears, crouching low, but her eyes stayed fixed on him. Daniel moved like a trained soldier, fast, calm, always aiming before he fired. 2 more enemies fell, but one got close. Crashing into the front wall, Daniel shoved her behind the couch. "Stay down," he shouted. The front door burst open. A tall armored man stormed in. Gun raised, but Daniel met him head-on, knocking the weapon aside and tackling him to the ground. They struggled, fists slamming, metal cracking. She crawled forward and grabbed the smaller blaster. Her hands shook, but she aimed it with both arms, pointed straight at the attacker's back. He raised a knife to Daniel's neck. She pulled the trigger. The blast hit the enemy hard, and he dropped instantly. Silence. For a moment, her body trembled, but her hands didn't let go of the weapon. Daniel looked up at her, stunned but proud. "You did good," he whispered, breathless. More sounds outside, but fading. The remaining attackers were retreating. Daniel stood slowly, limping slightly. They weren't expecting resistance. He said, "We got lucky." She helped him to the chair, wrapping a cloth around the cut on his shoulder. "Why would you do all this?" she whispered, voice shaking. He looked at her, weak but smiling. "Because they were wrong about you," he said. "And I wanted to prove it, starting with me." That night, they didn't sleep. They stayed close to the fire, watching the door, the stars, and each other. And for the first time, she wasn't thinking about surviving. She was thinking about fighting back. The fire had gone low by morning. She sat beside Daniel, watching the soft glow fade into ash. His arm was bandaged, his shirt torn, and his face pale, but he was still breathing, still alive. The attack had ended, but the silence that followed was just as loud. She hadn't slept, not because of fear, but because her mind refused to stop moving. He had nearly died for her. He didn't own her, didn't owe her, and still, he chose to stay, to fight. Daniel stirred beside her, opening one eye slowly. "You're still here," he whispered. She gave a small smile. "So are you." He chuckled softly, then winced from the pain in his shoulder. Barely, she stood up and helped him sit properly, placing a cushion behind his back. She moved with care, now not like a slave who feared orders, but like someone who chose to help. Daniel noticed it too. "You don't have to wait on me," he said. "I know," she replied, "but I want to." They sat in silence for a moment. Then she asked, "Do you think they'll come back?" Daniel looked toward the broken window. "They might, but it won't be tonight. What happens when they do? Then we make sure we're ready." She looked at him carefully. "Then I'll be ready too." Daniel raised an eyebrow. "You want to stay?" She nodded slowly. "I don't want to run anymore." He leaned forward, resting his elbows on his knees. "You were never meant to run. You were meant to stand, to live, to be free." Her voice trembled. "Then let me stand beside you." He reached into his jacket and pulled out a small device, the same one he had offered her the night before. "This beacon leads to a safe zone. You could still use it." "I could," she agreed. "But I won't." She walked over to the fire and tossed the beacon into the ashes. "My freedom isn't somewhere else," she said, turning back to him. "It's here." Daniel didn't stop her. He just watched with quiet eyes and a soft breath. "I don't know who I really am yet," she admitted, "but I want to find out here with you." He smiled at that. "Then we'll figure it out together." Later that day, they began repairing the damage together. She helped him patch up the walls, sweep the floors, and fix the broken locks. She even laughed once. When a hammer slipped from her hand and landed on his boot. "You've got a strong arm," he said, grinning through the pain. "And you've got tough feet," she replied. The house felt different now. It wasn't a hiding place anymore. It was home. At sunset, they sat outside under the quiet sky. The wind was soft, the stars returning one by one. She looked at Daniel, then asked something that had been buried deep inside her. "Do you have a family?" Daniel's eyes drifted to the horizon. "Not anymore," he said. "I lost them a long time ago." She lowered her head. "I never had one." He looked at her. "That's not true anymore." She turned to him, confused. "What do you mean?" He reached out, not to grab, not to pull, but to gently take her hand. "You're not just someone I saved," he said. "You're part of my life now." He paused, voice quiet but strong. "Your family?" Tears filled her eyes. Not from pain, but from something deeper, something she had never felt before. Belonging, not as a servant, not as someone rescued out of pity, but as someone wanted. She squeezed his hand. "Then you're my family too." He nodded once, and for the first time. The silence between them wasn't heavy. It was warm. They stayed outside until the stars filled the sky. In a galaxy full of war, greed, and slavery, one broken girl had found something greater than freedom. She found someone who looked past her scars, her past, her fear, and called her family.